The search for America's best cake decorators is on.
The tier cake that I'm going to be decorating today is a two-tier cake that can be used for a bridal shower, for an engagement party, for a birthday. It's very versatile in what it can be celebrated with. I feel like I'll be dedicating a lot to the foundation and the basis of the cake. I'm pretty hands-on when it comes to wanting the cake to be perfect and level, and without a structure that's perfectly sound, I get nervous and I feel like my cake is not going to look as good. So I'm definitely going to spend at least probably half the time making sure that it's structurally sound.
The tiered cake that I'm decorating today is going to be a circus theme. It's going to be food, all the food that you can find at a circus. I'll be using a lot of different techniques. I'll be using some hand painting, some modeling, some sculptured cakes, and some airbrushing.
Some of the techniques I'll be using will be some fondant, some scrolls out of buttercream, some fondant balls that we'll be doing in different colors, and some of the bows, which we have to use in fondant. You know, I think I'm going to be time crunched for it because there's some elements that have to be made for it. I kind of see it as a challenge.
I have an idea of making a two-tier wedding cake, relatively simple fondant cake. I want to put some gum paste flowers on it, and just sometimes, you know, more is not better. So I wanted to keep it a little bit simple, not use too much color, and we'll see how that comes out. I'm gonna look forward to finishing that in time.
For the tier cake, I'll be decorating with a technique I learned from Ann Heath. It will be using two cardboards and it's kind of filling in the middles with the icing so that you get a really straight line to your icing. If your cake is lopsided or if one side is angled out and the other side is straight, it's just an ugly cake, and it's something I won't be pleased with. I am feeling a bit rushed. It's taking a little bit longer than I'd like.
The only thing I have a concern about is, do I have enough time to make all these elements up? You got to be pretty quick about it because it dries so quick. And especially being so dry down here in Texas, in Houston, we really have to worry about that. And what I do is I just lay them, try to get them kind of even. And the pole actually is kind of good because it gives you a good indicator of where you want to be. So if you make your strips too long, you can kind of just pinch them where they need to be, and then you can just cut them.
I'm going to use just a slight carving technique whenever I'm making the popcorn bucket. Just something to give it a little dimension besides just a plain flat square cake. Just a little shaving down of the sides to make it a little more realistic. The most difficult thing is getting the shape right and covering everything neatly in the time that we have. I'm struggling a little bit with the fondant. Just when you cover a tapered element like that, it's kind of hard to keep the fondant from bunching up. Especially on a square cake, because square cakes are always harder to cover anyway, but I've got a few ways that I can cover that up. What the heck was I thinking whenever I decided to do a tapered cake in an hour?
I talk to people, they come in here for a tasting and we talk about wedding cakes. Most people come and say, we don't like fondant, it's nasty. Fondant is a sugar paste that came into the play when people really didn't know how to ice a cake very nice and smooth. And so this gum paste or sugar paste, you roll it out, cover the cake with, but lots of people roll it out by hand. There's a fine line between, you know, thin and ideal, you know, but too thick is no good because of the taste. For a show cake, maybe okay, but not for a cake you're selling it to the public.
So how I'm going to make the mask is I'm going to take a piece of fondant, roll it out, place it on top of that, get my shape that I want, and then I'm going to actually draw in all my elements that I want on the mask. Put all my glitter, my disco dust, and get all that on there. When these dry, they dry a real ugly color, and so what ends up happening is to get them to look nice, you apply steam to them, and they come out really nice and shiny. We've been doing this for years, actually.
I'm pretty good on time, so I'm going to try to make a hot dog out of a loaf pan. I've never made a hot dog before, so this ought to be really interesting. I'll cover the whole thing in fondant, and the hot dog I'll make out of gum paste. I'm just gonna highlight the bun a little bit, kind of give it like a little more depth. I think when you airbrush, it adds a little more dimension to it. Kind of makes things pop. I'm gonna actually give it some relish and some onions and a little bit of mustard on top.
So what I like to do first is kind of go over with my hands. I find that if you use the smoother first, it kind of it pulls it way too much, and it's a lot easier for me to feel what I'm doing when I'm using my hands. So you just kind of want to stretch it slowly, rub and stretch as you work your way around. You don't want to pull too hard or too fast or stretch it too much, because then you'll rip your fondant. You slowly work it, pulling as you go so there's no wrinkles in the fondant. It covers it.
The skills from piping come from doing it over and over again. It's just routine, it's practice, it's sit down and wipe it off again, redo it again. Patience and practice. I started 35 years ago decorating and piping. First you learn the basics, which is washing dishes and sweeping floors and all that good stuff.
So we're just gonna make a little bow on top. As far as the style goes, I think Mardi Gras is just so many things going on that you kind of have to have all those things going on. I mean, if it was a wedding cake, for sure, I would not use these kind of elements and this much stuff on there, and not at all. So, different kind of take on cake.
Popcorn's flying everywhere. I've got a few minutes left, and I'm gonna try to cover up some of these bad spots that are in the fondant. So the popcorn is gonna stick to it really good, and it'll camouflage all of those little imperfections. Anywhere that's kind of funky, you just kind of stick your popcorn to it. And because this paint that I painted is still wet, you don't even have to do anything to it. It just sticks straight to it.
What's very popular right now that people like pearlized cake, which is pearl dust and mixed with vodka. You just spray the cake after it's decorated. Pearl dust is a powder you buy, but I also mix it with vodka because alcohol evaporates. If you use water, you'll get all wet and you stay wet. My idea is to get a taupe colored fondant, roll it out thin, and shape it into a drape over some dowels, and then cut it off and just lay it on there. Have it kind of guiding it like a waterfall coming through the side down, and then just on those points where they intersect, you put some flowers on.
The main issue that I'm having with this cake is that because I didn't get to measure it out, the back, will be the back of my cake, is not as pretty as I would like it to be. I may be able to use my ribbon and my bow that are going to be hanging down to hide the imperfections, and hopefully it works out that way. Time sure is slipping by.
I was real happy with the way it turned out. I was happy with my time that I did. I was happy with the elements on it. I think I could have added a little more disco dust to it, but I think it turned out pretty good.
The popcorn is actually made from miniature marshmallows. You take a little star tool and you just kind of manipulate the marshmallows. You don't have to use water or anything to put it together, and then it's all airbrushed after that. I'm a big believer. If I make the decorations, it's going on there. I don't care what I have to do. If I have taken the time to make it, every single piece that I make is going to go on there.
I feel if I had had a little more time, the design would definitely have been a lot cleaner. To do that design for me with the cutter and to not actually have time to measure it out is very frustrating, and it's not always accurate. A lot of times you kind of are overlapping, you kind of have to work in the angles, and I had to do that today, but it came out pretty well.
Front, just the back. I think it turned out okay. It's what a wedding cake's supposed to look like. I didn't use much color in it. I didn't want to. because the wedding cake, in my opinion, or being from Europe, we don't use blue colors and all these colors on wedding cake. So I'm pretty pleased with it, how it turned out, and hopefully you all can use that.